Hi everyone, it's Adam with Milo's Restoration, and today I'm going to be lacquering this desk for a family friend, and they wanted Hague Blue, which is a Ferro and Ball color, but we're going to mix it in lacquer, and I'm actually going to show you how to just tint your primer in lacquer and then clear coat over it. So it's a different way of doing things, but it looks really nice. So I'm just going to start by cleaning with I usually like about a 95 to 5 mix of naphtha and acetone. And obviously, please, assess your risk for the particular place you're in whenever you're doing this and be careful when you clean. You also want to make sure that you don't eat into the previous coat so much, but it's a good way to get rid of grease that's on there. And this had a little bit of wax on it. So in scenarios like that, I like to use the naphtha. So whenever I'm using the naphtha and acetone mix, I do run all of my fans just to get all the fumes out. And for this desktop, it had like kind of like a textured MDF that was supposed to be like a faux leather look. And I just decided to sand as much of it out as I could and then treat it as like basically a raw MDF and seal it again. So this is the same Mohawk vinyl sealer that I'm going to use for the rest of the desk, but I wanted to put a few more coats of it on the top since I was sanding it all the way back. Just back to cleaning now, and I'm just doing the same process as I was earlier. So whenever I'm sanding before I'm going to do lacquer, I usually like to sand it pretty aggressively. Usually I'll go with the 180 or at the very finest a 220. And what I'll do is I'll use this 5-inch orbital on the flatter surfaces. Even like the large planes like this, even though it's a curved area, it'll still fit a 5-inch orbital. And I'll sand those areas with that. And then I'll come back with my surf prep or a hand sanding pad and sand in between the curves. Okay, so this is actually a Nylox brush. And I like to make sure that when you have a surface like that that's very hard to get into with a normal sander, it's just easier to use a Nylox brush. And they come in all different grits, just like sandpaper. But instead of being like a wire wheel, it's just like a nylon material. And the little fibers, the little strands don't get all over the place like they do from a metal wheel, and it's just less abrasive. Okay, so here I'm mixing up the vinyl sealer, and like I said, this is going to be the color coat as well as the primer. So that's kind of one function of it that I like, is that you get to kind of do two things in one step. But basically, I'm just spraying it out of a 1.8, no 1.5, I'm sorry, in a Fuji HVLP, and I thin it by about 10 to 15% lacquer thinner. And the good thing about Mohawk is that they try to supply their products ready to spray. And so the color on this is Hague Blue, and this is basically known as a vinyl modified like lacquer undercoater. And it's really good for water resistance. It's really good for, you know, use under basically all coatings. It'll work as a primer, but particularly lacquer. So, all HVLP turbine guns have their weaknesses. And the problem that I'm about to run into here is that the Fuji lids always leak. I don't know why. But I had to switch to my Graco and use that for the last coat of the vinyl sealer as well as the top coat. And, as far as like what tip to use for the Graco, in lacquer, for the Fuji HVLPs, I usually like a 1.5 to a 1.8, kind of on the larger tip size. And then for the Graco, I'd say, their 3 or 4 tip size is probably fine. Okay, so this stuff sands really easily, so you don't really need a super aggressive. 4 to 600 grit. Uh, if you're using a surf prep sander like me, which I highly recommend, a very fine or super fine pad will do just fine. And I'll use the firm pads, and you can see right there where I kind of burn into the color at. If you feel comfortable with it, that you can get it flat enough just hand sanding it, I would recommend that, because you'll be even less likely to burn through your color. Because remember, since we're using a clear coat over this, um, if you burn through the color, it's obviously going to be noticeable. So it's just even more important to make sure that you don't burn through the primer anywhere. Just a little like kind of piece of information here for some of you who are interested in furniture flipping. If you do like to do distressed furniture, I actually think that this method is one of the best, because what you can do is like right now, let's say that I wanted to distress this piece, I could just sand it and purposefully burn through the primer in areas to make it kind of give it that distressed like old look, and then spray my clear coat over it, and it kind of adds to the look of it, and it's just an easy way to do it. But the thing is that you get way better protection than you would with something like chalk paint, and it's just, in my opinion, way more superior method to do it. And yeah, I mean, so you get the protection of the lacquer and the clear coat, but you still get to distress a piece. I'm not sure how many of you do the whole distress furniture thing here. I used to, not as much as I do anymore, but yeah, just a little helpful kind of tip for y'all. So this is the final coat of vinyl sealer, and you just really want to be careful when you sand. I'm not too worried about it on the top because I've put so much sealer on that, and I really need to get a flat surface on that because that's obviously going to be the working surface. So, but for the drawers and for the case and everything else, I'll try to sand a little bit more carefully. And actually, I even prefer hand sanding at this point. Okay, so for spraying lacquer, I think this is probably going to be the most important information that I'm probably going to give in this video. And basically, it's one of the most frustrating things for me that occurred, which was that I would keep adjusting my lacquer, I would keep thinning it, I'd keep retarding it, I'd keep doing anything I could to it to try to get it to do what I wanted it to and get like that kind of wet look and get it to all lay out and have an even sheen. And basically, what I've kind of come to the conclusion of, and I'm still not sure, you know, um, is that I think that it's usually a result of having a little bit too wide of a fan pattern and having too much air and not enough fluid. So what happens is that whenever you spray, you get what looks like dry spray on the edges of your pattern, and it gets in the previous lap that you just made, and it looks like an inconsistent sheen. So I kind of actually found that backing my air off a little bit led to a better finish quality, as well as holding the gun a little bit closer to the surface. Now, I'm not a professional with this in the sense that I'm not that great at applying lacquer. It's not a product that I've always used for a long time, but I have found that I got better results. And, it really didn't make a difference what chemical additives I added to it. Uh, it just seems like it's more a result of how you spray it. And the typical kind of knowledge with HVLP turbines is that, well, they don't have a lot of pressure, so you just turn it all the way up. But I think when it comes to lacquer and thinner materials, that might not be the case. So in between coats of lacquer, this is all I do, just a quick hand sanding with a Surf Prep Superfine pad, and I'm just very careful not to eat into the surface too much. It sands really easily, so you really shouldn't have any problems. Usually, if it's kind of gumming up your sandpaper, it's a good indicator that you're sanding a little bit too early. And yeah, this is my final coat of lacquer. I didn't have a whole lot of footage of this coat, but I sprayed 2 coats and just did a little quick, scuff sand in between. And the finished product, in my opinion, really looked good. After that, I was ready to reinstall the drawers and get the new hardware on it. So here's the final dresser, and I got everything ready, and I got all the new hardware put on, and I'm hoping to get it delivered this week. So if there's any questions you have, let me know, and please subscribe for more content like this. Thank you.